Hello and welcome to another episode of KammaKast, the podcast where we talk to lots of very interesting people about lots of topics relating to financial services, real estate and climate change in general. Today we have a very interesting guest. Emma Walsh is joining us today and she's going to talk to us about a variety of topics around food waste, circular economy, the Sustainable Development Goals and industry action towards sustainability and what we can learn from that. So Emma, I'll let you introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about yourself, what you've been working on in sustainability for around 15 years now.
Yeah, so thanks, Orla. It's really exciting to be on the KammaKast today. So yeah, as you said, I've been working in sustainability or what was back then environment for around 15 years. So I started out as a civil and environmental engineer. And during that time, I worked on lots of infrastructure projects. So lots of things around soil stability, wind farms, water treatment projects. And I suppose this really sparked my interest in, what was happening from a kind of environmental protection standpoint, and also, the kind of, I suppose, changing seasons and conditions with a kind of, changing weather patterns and how we were tackling that from a kind of infrastructure perspective. So I guess that piqued my interest in sustainability. And while I was doing my MBA, I came across the whole world of tech startups, which you guys are obviously very familiar with. But I suppose I was really interested in the juncture between technology and sustainability and how we could leverage tech to kind of have action at scale. So I joined a social enterprise in Ireland called FoodCloud, and I've been working there for the last 7 years. And yeah, FoodCloud connects businesses that have too much food with charities that need food. So it's basically all about reducing food waste. And it's, I suppose, a really good solution for people and the planet insofar as it helps us to kind of reduce food waste from business operations, but it also helps those who maybe don't have enough to eat. So I've been working there. I just finished up at the start of the summer, but I had a great, I suppose, a couple of years working with businesses like Tesco and Waitrose, helping them to reduce their food waste, and really, I suppose, working at a European level around food waste legislation and I suppose policy as well. So yeah, interesting times and an interesting, I suppose, juncture into the sustainability world.
Yeah, it's because I obviously know FoodCloud being an Irish person as well. And I also feel like FoodCloud are really kind of ahead of their time almost. They were like ahead of the game with the solution they had, which started out as it's quite inspirational, a university project. What have you seen over the years of how views of kind of corporates and businesses have changed, as we get closer to, some of these kind of mental dates around 2030 is kind of a big date for a lot of goal setting. And obviously, as we kind of get closer to 2050 and everybody's getting more worried about climate change, have you seen a big change in attitude and in action being taken?
Yeah, I think, what's really good now is that we have a lot of targets and everybody's quite focused, as you said, on the big dates like 2030. And I guess maybe when we started with FoodCloud and, the solution was probably more attractive for its social benefits. So, the helping people, the charity side of things. But I guess what was really good about the solution we're delivering is that we were able to measure and quantify the impact and the environmental impacts of the solution. So really in the last couple of years, that really came into its own because, I would say that there was a shift where, things went from, maybe having a CSR team in a lot of businesses to that now being more focused on sustainability. And that's obviously really positive because, it's great to see more of these green initiatives getting on the agenda. And I think particularly where initiatives are able to quantify their impact, that has huge business benefits. So by being able to say, okay, this has resulted in the redistribution of X tons of food, which equates to, a carbon reduction impact, that's hugely beneficial because I suppose a lot of CSR initiatives, as they would have been called maybe up to a couple of years ago, had maybe more tenuous links to impact. It's not always directly measurable, so that was always a bit of a challenge as well. So it's great to see businesses becoming so focused on data, so focused on their impact, and reporting it and kind of that transparency around that.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that has been so transformative is that these new standards are coming in, they're being adopted by, IFRS, which is a major one this year, and UN sustainability goals being taken very seriously by a lot of businesses. So hopefully the only way is up from here. But can we talk a little bit more about food waste? And given that was a huge area of expertise for so many years, tell me more.
Yeah, absolutely. I think food waste is a really interesting environmental issue because it's not recognized by a lot of people as being an environmental issue. So a lot of
Yeah.
people recognize that food waste is bad and that we shouldn't waste food, but actually the why it's so bad isn't widely understood. So we actually waste about 30 to 40% of the food that's produced globally. So and that's, incredibly
Wow.
large when you think of about food production on a global scale. And
Sorry,
so
30 to 40%. Is that what you
yeah,
said? Is what
yeah.
we
So
waste?
30 to
It's massive.
40% of food that we grow annually is never eaten. So we use, I think it's land the size of China, Mongolia, and Kazakhstan to grow food that never makes it to our plates every year. And when you consider now the pressure that we're under as a planet, so we've got a rising population, we've got, more areas that are at risk of flooding and extreme weather. So, actually what's really positive is that not wasting food is a great way for us to easily maximize use of resources that we have and to be able to put ourselves in a better position to feed the rising population in the future. So I guess food waste happens for a variety of reasons and at all stages of the food supply chain. And what's, I suppose, really interesting is that food waste actually results in the emission of methane. So the food we don't eat emits about 8 to 10% of global greenhouse gas emissions. And when you consider that the aviation
Wow.
industry is 2%, so all the flights that we have globally is 2%, but food waste, the food that we don't eat, is about 8 to 10%. So
And
yeah,
nobody
it's a
talks
staggering
about that
problem.
either, do they?
No, no, it's
Yeah.
like the hidden greenhouse gas in some ways, So I think it's something that affects us all as well. So we all know in our homes that there's food on different occasions that doesn't get eaten, but actually, what we don't realize is that the food that we don't eat in our homes is probably the biggest contributor, I suppose, on a national level anyway, to the food that we waste. So, in the UK, about 70% of food waste is at a consumer level. So it's a huge
So
problem.
does that
But yeah, sorry, yeah, go ahead.
so does that mean, so that would be food that I bought in my weekly shop that either I don't get round to eating, so it goes off, or it's whatever I leave on my plate as well.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's
seventy
the
percent.
yeah. So and
It's
I suppose
insane.
there's some parts of that will be your potato peelings or the stalks of your broccoli,
Yeah,
whatever it is, the bits that you're not going to eat. But I suppose ultimately there's an awful lot of food that we purchase that we don't actually eat. And what I suppose what's really interesting in this is that during the pandemic, there's a great organisation in the UK called WRAP, and they do a lot of studies on food waste. And during the pandemic was reduced the amount of waste in the home because they had more time. We were more into freezing. We were more considered about cooking. But now with kind of going back to normal life and the kind of day-to-day pressures of being busy and not having enough time maybe to cook as much, we're back to the pre-pandemic levels of wasting food. So I suppose the really positive thing from all of that is that we as consumers can influence change by making small actions in our own homes. And I often think
yeah.
food waste is a big problem, but it's got delicious solutions. So the delicious solution is, that we can eat this food and we can play our part in kind of making a difference as well. So
Which I have experienced firsthand, as you and I are friends. So I definitely have learned a lot about not wasting food. I've developed a more of a conscience around it that has been ingrained from spending lots of time with Emma and what can be done with stuff that you think it doesn't do much in your fridge. So just kind of being a bit creative about it. So yeah, it can actually be a fun process as well.
good stuff. But I suppose that's just at the consumer level. I think what's really interesting though is kind of when we're looking across the industry, there's there's ultimately, really positive solutions for food waste as well at a business level, because kind of food that we waste impacts profit as well as,
Yeah.
I suppose, the environmental impact. So there's a lot that we can do with businesses as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So remind me again, was it, you said 7 to 10% of greenhouse gas emissions is from food waste?
Yeah, 8 to
But that's
10%.
kind of
Yeah,
crazy.
yeah,
8 to 10%, because we talk about the built environment here, which globally, well, here in the UK, it's responsible for 22% of all greenhouse gas emissions. Globally, it's 40% of all greenhouse gas emissions. But to think that food waste, which is something that is arguably more easily influenced, contributes, nearly half of what the greenhouse gas emissions from property is in the UK. It's staggering, actually. It's definitely something I hadn't fully appreciated before.
yeah. And I think, yeah, I suppose, I think the great thing about where we are now as a society is that we're starting to look at the data. We're starting to look at the different sectors, where the contributions, and I suppose it's that real kind of target, measure, act approach, which I think has, it is something that makes it much easier for businesses and governments and institutions to get behind and kind of make plans around where we can target the biggest.
Yeah, definitely. So it is such a massive problem that we can actually impact in our day to day. As we here at Kamma are a tech company, can you talk to us a bit more from a tech perspective? And I understand there's lots of new solutions cropping up that are adopting circular practices. And can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah, of course. So I guess we've talked a lot about food waste in the home and the challenges of consumers, and I suppose it's important to understand the kind of role that businesses play as well. And an awful lot of food is wasted in the home, but then we still have the food supply chain. So there's lots of opportunity, and we're seeing lots of, I suppose, innovative businesses spring up to kind of tackle these problems. So I suppose some of the interesting ones and some great companies I would have worked with are looking at, I suppose, the restaurant space. And, in restaurants, for example, in the UK, the kind of hospitality sector, about 3.2 billion pounds worth of food is wasted every year, and about 75% of that is avoidable. So if you think about that and you're running a business that's a low margin business, that's
Yeah.
obviously something that you want to nip in the bud. So some of the solutions that we're kind of seeing are, I guess, they're sort of a circular economy kind of principles underlying them, whereby they're trying to take something that would arise as waste and to kind of, I suppose, restore it to being useful. So I suppose the idea of the circular economy is that it reduces material use, redesigns materials and products, and ultimately create services that are less resource intensive. So it's all about maximization of resources and the kind of rethinking waste. So some really good solutions that I suppose I've seen. Too Good to Go would be one. So this enables businesses to sell food at the end of the day at a reduced price. So it's a tech platform. It's sort of a marketplace. And businesses, say your local restaurant, if they have stuff coming towards the end of the day that they haven't sold, they can sell it on this marketplace as a reduced price, so that they can still recoup some of their costs, but then also that they're not wasting food. Another one that's, I think, really, really great is Olio. So Olio is a sharing platform, and it's not just for food. It covers a kind of variety of objects and items, but it encouraged businesses and individuals who have food and other items to kind of share them in their community. So this is, a really good idea if there's food if you're going to wait for the weekend and your fridge is full and you can't bring the food with you can put it on Olio and someone will pop over to your house and pick it up. Or, if you have, say, it's back to school time, if you've lots of back to, school stuff from last year that maybe you don't need anymore, you can pop it on Olio. And it's really what nice way to, maybe get to know your neighbours or kind of feel that element of community as well.
I feel that will become more and more important as the cost of living crisis becomes more kind of acutely felt by everybody.
Yeah, I think that's such a good point, because, the with the cost of living crisis, we're all going to look to, I suppose, reduce our costs, and like, food waste and sharing or reuse are really, really good ways to do that. So they not only have environmental benefits, they also have kind of financial benefits for us personally. So, and I guess that's the good thing about some of these environmental solutions, that they are quite aligned in terms of if we're insulating our houses to make them more efficient, it ultimately, while there's an outlay to start a capital outlay, ultimately in the long run, there's a benefit for that in us, and it's also good for the planet. So yeah, it's nice to see these solutions that are aligned.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I didn't realize it was such an active space. Actually, there is quite a lot of innovation going on around this kind of, as you kind of refer to it, as kind of circular economy around food.
Or sharing economy as well. Yeah, there's lots of good buzzwords for it.
Lots of good buzzwords. Yeah. You know you're onto something when there's a lot of buzzwords coming out. But can you tell me, outside of startups and tech, how has the food industry started to tackle the issue of food waste in its operations?
Yeah, so I suppose a lot of the kind of businesses in the food industry in the last couple of years have really gotten on board with measuring. And that's, such a good place, as we talked about earlier in the podcast, measuring what gets, the old adage, what gets measured gets managed. So, just by actually signing up to kind of measure your food waste and report on it has been a huge step. And you'll know that very well, Orla, being a data company, and having the right information allows you to make the right decisions. Yeah. So I guess, the measurement has been really important. And one of the challenging things for the industry has been, as they've done more measurement, they found more potential food waste. So, for example, at a farm level, what they call like before the farm gate or pre-harvest, the first big study was done about a year ago, and they actually found about 7% more food waste than they had thought previously at a kind of global level. So it's definitely a challenge for the industry, but I think as they've gotten better information, they've been able to do more. So I think one of the really good things that I've seen over the last, I suppose, couple of years has been collaboration, and in particular in the UK, the group I spoke about, RAP, they've brought a lot of people together. There's been lots of voluntary commitments, and with that has come a lot of information and knowledge sharing. So you see a lot of businesses now that have actually made commitments towards their 2030 food waste reduction, and lots of really good case studies coming out of that. But I think what has been really effective globally has been the creation of the European 12.3 group. So just to digress for a second, you'll be familiar with the Sustainable Development Goals, which are basically a collection of 17 interlinked global goals, and kind of it's a shared blueprint for, I suppose, ultimately a better future for people and the planet. So these were set up in 2015 by the UN, and they have lots of different indicators, and food waste actually has its own, I suppose, goal and indicator. So Sustainable Development Goal 12.3 targets the reduction of food waste at retail and consumer levels. And that had, there was an industry group then formed around this, and called Champions 12.3. So this brought together a lot of retailers, a lot of the big players in the food sector, and they really kind of focused on taking action. Lots of high profile leaders. You had Dave Lewis from Tesco, who was the previous CEO. And I suppose this, I think, really sort of set this ambition and goal for taking action and making progress. And that, that's been supported by the World Resource Institute has been really actively involved in that. And I've really seen that mobilize a lot of action. They adopted this target, measure, act approach. So it's, what's our target? Target is the achievement of SDG 12.3, which is 50% reduction in food loss and waste. And then the measurement. So lots of businesses initially signed up to measure their food waste and report on it. And then that brings us to what we spoke about earlier, that final stage, which is action. And I guess we're seeing a lot of traction with that. You have, I guess lots of businesses reporting on their kind of reductions over time. They've set their baselines. And I think that's been really good, not only for encouraging others to take action, but also for, I suppose, really sharing information and helping businesses, maybe smaller businesses, to get ideas for what they can do in their own operations. So yeah, I think that's been really, really effective, and it's nice to see industry groups coming together and, I suppose, taking the initiative and taking responsibility without there being actual regulation there as well. I think it's very positive.
Yeah, and it's also made me think as well, because I know, like, particularly in the kind of commercial real estate world, the fact that fuel prices, and we will see this in the residential world as well, but the fact that energy is such a huge cost to run a building, that it's, you know, quite often when you feel the pinch in your pocket, it is what makes you do something. And I was just thinking as you're speaking, although it is great that actually these businesses are taking the initiative even when regulation hasn't been enforced around it. But there is also, I'm sure, a cost benefit to it as well, because I'm assuming there is quite a large cost to disposing of food waste, that if it can be either tackled at source or redistributed through companies like FoodCloud, that there is also a kind of monetary benefit to that as well, that, you know, you may not realize it upfront because there may be investment involved, but kind of over time it makes a lot of sense.
Totally. And that group we were just talking about, Champions 12.3, have done a study, and they showed that for every pound that a business spent on food waste reduction, that there was an ultimate £12 return over time. Now, obviously, that will vary by the part of the food chain you're in. But yes, absolutely. You know, what you're saying is totally correct. There's a cost to throwing away food. And I think over time, we will only see that increase because, you know, maybe there's going to be green premiums or environmental premiums around these things. So I think you know, for businesses, the smart thing to do is just start to think about what are the ways that you can incorporate sustainability processes in your day-to-day operations so that you're set up for you know, to, I suppose, reap the rewards of them now, because there's obviously there's great you know, there's great cost savings, but then also I think that the impetus of the business case for adopting those will only get stronger over time.
Yeah, absolutely. Which is great to see that being kind of publicized and recognized as well with companies like WRAP and the 12.3 Champions Group. And kind of just going back to, like, because I'm always, because we look at everything from a property perspective as well. So I'm always like comparing, albeit, you know, climate change is such a vast thing that touches so many areas, our sustainability even. What do you think we can learn from this industry that you're coming from around food waste sustainability and apply to the real estate sector?
Yeah, I think some of the learnings, I suppose, that we've talked about today can probably be applied to any sector. You know, that sort of target, measure, act approach, really, I can't think of anywhere where that wouldn't work well. You know, so if you have what are we trying to get to? What's that unified goal? And I think, you know, when everybody is, like in any organization, when you have a North Star and when everybody is aligned towards it, it really can solidify or cement action. So, for example, say that the real estate sector, you know, I think it's SDG 7.3 sets out by 2030 will double global rate of improvement in energy efficiency. So that's, you know, maybe a good one to think about in terms of the real estate sector. But, you know, and I think then, like, so setting the North Star, having the kind of measurement, you know, we spoke about that as well. Like, measurement is so important, because without our measurement, we don't know where to take that action. And I guess, as you know, it's widely publicized now, and especially as we heard a lot during COP26 last year, it's the time for action. So really, the targets and the measurement, where they haven't happened, that needs to happen very quickly, and we need to start making, you know, decisive action around the kind of measures that we're going to take to I suppose, improve all. So yeah, I think, you know, having something that unifies the sector and that everybody is aligned towards working through, I think that's one of the biggest hurdles, but it's also one of the biggest benefits that we can have.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think measuring is so important, but also from a kind of benchmarking perspective. So, like, you know, you could think you're doing great, but actually relative to the rest of the industry or the world or whatever, you could be, actually your progress could be terrible. And like, how do you know you've progressed if you're not actually measuring anything as well? So I would say this because we obviously come at everything from a data perspective, but it is so important, because otherwise we're really just kidding ourselves. So yeah, I just think it is a very exciting time in all of these areas where, it's very much emerging, but I think it's emerging rapidly, some of it out of necessity, some of it out of just a kind of collective will to tackle the problem. But either way, I like, it is a very exciting space to be in. We absolutely love it. And it's great to see, to learn a bit more about a whole other area of sustainability like food waste that I guess I have a bit of an awareness, obviously from being friendly with you, but I think a lot of people don't think about it in the kind of huge terms that you've kind of brought to us today. Like remind me again, what countries was it? China, Mongolia? Say that again, because I thought that was really powerful and I want to use it again.
These are the things that are ingrained in your mind from doing the pitches to people.
That are terrifying.
Yeah. So 30 to 40% of food is wasted globally. And every year we use land the size of China, Mongolia and Kazakhstan to grow food that's never eaten. But
that's insane.
But the good thing, Orla, is that we can all take action in our homes. We don't have to go out and buy anything. We don't have to do anything that, we don't need anything that we don't already have. All we need to do is eat the food.
Yeah, so it's just having that kind of consciousness around so much is wasted. The next time you do your shop, maybe you will be a bit more conscious about what you didn't eat the last time and maybe don't buy that this time. Or maybe just download an app like Olio and, if you're not going to use it, if you're going away, just like put it on the app and you could be really helping someone quite needy. So yeah, lots of things learned. Anything else that you'd like to talk about today, Emma?
I think that's been really good. Yeah, just... I suppose just to remind people to empty out their fridges and eat all their food, really. That's the big message. So thanks for the opportunity. Yeah, that empty fridge Friday was one that we used to have a few years ago. So trying to make that catch on, but I think people are generally too busy going to the pub on a Friday evening. So maybe we'll have to get a different day.
Yeah. Well, Emma, thanks so much for coming to talk to us today and sharing so much of your vast knowledge in this area. And I hope some of our listeners do take away some of those absolute gems of nuggets. And the main one being that you can actually yourself have quite a tangible impact on what is a huge problem, where we waste 30 to 40% of food that is produced, amounting to 3 extremely large countries. So so please, everybody, have a little bit more care around your own food waste. And I hope you enjoyed our podcast today. Thanks, Emma.
Thanks, Orla.